Welcome to the Plant-Based Asia Summit, where we inspire a healthier and more sustainable Asia Pacific. My name is Luke, your co-host, and today our next speaker I would like to introduce you to is my friend, my inspiration, Dotsie Bausch. After conquering habits and addictions that nearly took her life, Dotsie rode onto the 2012 Olympic podium as the oldest athlete in history in her cycling discipline, a remarkable feat powered by her plant-based diet. Now retired from competition, she pours her passion into compassionate missions to change and save lives. She's also one of the stars for the 2019 documentary, The Game Changers, produced by James Cameron. Welcome, Dotsie, and thank you for being here.
Here we are again. I wish I was in the same room as you and we were hanging, but we'll take to Zoom, won't we?
I know. It's amazing. I mean, we've it's been a few years since we last connected, and my goodness, what a journey you've been in, and just to be at the start of it and to where it is right now with Switch for Good, changing the way Olympians eat, and just all of it really, and just being a podcast host. I mean, for those that don't already know you, maybe you could just give us a little bit of an intro or rundown on where you were before, how this journey began, and why is it so important to you?
Thank you for asking. Well, I started cycling very late to land on the Olympic podium anyway. I didn't start until 26, and I was healing from anorexia. And it was a late stage suggestion by my therapist to find a way to move my body in a healthy way again. And I chose cycling. I said, well, what if I get a bike, And I was living out in Los Angeles by that time. I thought, oh, that would feel so freeing to just ride up and down Pacific Coast Highway and into the mountains. And, how about I just do that? And she's like, I love it. Go get a bike. So 13 years later, I just never quit cycling. Is what happened. I fell in love with it very quickly. And 13 years later, stood on the Olympic podium at 39 and a half, which is, a little older than most that go to the Olympics, certainly older than all of our competitors in that discipline that were in their early 20s. But what I had done 2 years prior to that Olympic podium appearance was change my diet and changed over from an entirely animal-based diet to an entirely plant-based diet. And I did it for ethics. I did it because I love animals. And I just had an epiphany one day that said, I think if I love something, I probably wouldn't be eating it. Like it's not lining up for me. So I said, okay, no more eating my friends. And I went on this just extraordinary journey down plant-based fueling, and didn't really know what was going to happen. I was a couple of years out. I hadn't made the Olympic team yet. I was in the mix of the women that might make the team. So I remember thinking, I hope I just stay the same. Like, I just hope this nutrition change just keeps me the same, and then maybe I can make the team. But it did so much more than that. Everything changed in a positive way in my body, from my repair and recovery to my output, to my strength, to my endurance, to my resilience, to my just waking up in the morning feeling like I wasn't so beat up and more energetic. So it was a great decision, and I'm still doing it.
One thing I remember from our very first interview, and the word that you brought up was grit. And that is something that I think you truly and deeply own, grit. So I think having grit, and I know that, especially for Switch for Good, you are against you are in a David versus Goliath battle. So from plant-based to taking on the Olympic Committee.
Well, it has been a journey, and I will say we're in a spot right now with the International Olympic Committee where we are in the midst of creating their first ever high performance plant-based playbook that they will send to the 206 Olympic committees from around the world. So it's come full circle. for sure. But the IOC was never really too much a thorn in my side. It was more the United States Olympic Committee that kind of just turned my stomach at every juncture. Here are the facts. The dairy industry is the title sponsor of the United States Olympic Committee. The United States and New Zealand are the only countries in the world that are not government funded, so they have to go out and find private funding. So the dairy industry sponsors the U.S. Olympic Committee, which you can imagine then inside the Olympic training centers where I trained and lived for many, many years on and off. Their nutrition is marketing from the dairy industry, telling you how fantastic this fluid from a cow is going to help you to repair and recover and perform at your optimum. And I just didn't believe their horseshit. I had proven to myself by the end anyway, that certainly wasn't the case. And there's a real big problem with pushing cow's milk on everyone. There's a real food injustice issue with that. And that is the fact that about 70% of our population, including Olympic athletes, can't even digest properly the lactose in cow's milk. It makes them very sick, everything from exacerbating asthma to waking up with a, sticky, stuffy, runny nose, to sore throat, to bloating, to constipation, to diarrhea. It's pretty gnarly symptoms. And so that's going to suck for anybody, but it's really going to suck for an Olympic athlete that needs to be able to digest their food and send them straight into their muscle to rebuild and repair and produce, every single day. So when I retired, I just had this moment that I knew that I wanted to do something in this movement. I wanted to find a way to use my voice and everything that I had learned and my passion and what resides just at the center of my core and my heart. And I wanted to figure out a way to best do that. And so, Switch for Good started not really as an organization, more as a movement from a variety of different Olympic athletes that agreed with me and said, let's stand up and let's say something. Let's tell the truth. Let's be bold about it. And so in 2018, a group of us put a commercial on the closing ceremonies of the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympic Games on NBC here in the United States that, basically said in 30 seconds, we don't need cow's milk to win medals. Stop peddling your crap. And here's the truth. So it really started as, well, I guess kind of a middle finger to all of the, the people and the industries and the marketing that had told us otherwise for our whole careers, and we weren't going to stand for it anymore. So now Switch for Good is an organization, but we didn't start that way. We started as activists. We're still activists, but we realized as we went along the journey after the commercial aired that we wanted to do more. And so the organization Switch for Good was born, and it's all activists behind it.
Yeah, indeed. Having been to the launch of the Switch for Good time in LA that I was there, was that the official launch of the organization?
Yeah, it really was. It really was. And I still look back on that. And first of all, I want to do it again. And there'll be so many more athletes, right? Because all of the collective work that there were about 100 athletes there from all over the world. And we did a 2-day summit, right? And we got together and we shared and we, collected ideas and we made connections and we became stronger together after those couple of days. And I think if we had it again, there'd be 1,000 athletes. There weren't a lot of us even back in the that was the fall of 2018. And so can you imagine now, pulling all the plant-based athletes together?
You need a much bigger space, because especially after Game Changers, everyone's really looking at a plant-based diet, and beyond that, of course, dairy as well. And I want to definitely focus on dairy. Why is there a correlation and a connection between milk, dairy, and performance and health to a certain degree? Because It's bizarre because even in Singapore, you know, all these years, I mean, right now dairy is just everywhere. I know the Western countries are moving up to a certain degree, moving away from dairy, but dairy is just everywhere. But there's this association. You get your vitamin D, you get your calcium, and how did this all begin, and why is there a
I know.
connection with performance in the first place?
Yeah, it just feels terrible that the Western diet is being spread into the Eastern world, because the Eastern world really had the healthiest hearts and the healthiest arteries for you know, millennials. So you know, again, I think you just have to go back to following the dollar at the end of the day. So the dairy industry in the United States alone has $91 million in their marketing budget every single year. So they got to figure out how to use that, and they got to figure out how to, you know, pull the wool over people's eyes so that they believe that this is, you know, like the only fluid, which is insane, by the way, right? Because there aren't any other species that steal the breast milk from another species and drink it in adulthood, period. But I think that they landed on, I know that they landed on athletes and children. So their two best marketing efforts have been convincing athletes that this is the perfect fluid. And here's where it's very frustrating in the conversation. It is a perfect fluid for a growing baby. Like it better be. It's mom's breast milk. So of course it has nutrients in it. Of course it has carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. Of course it has vitamins and minerals, but it's for a bovine baby. So there's many aspects of dairy and D-galactose, NEU5GC, the type of IGF-1 that it has in it that the human body doesn't recognize, because it's not human, you know, mother's breast milk, it's cow's breast milk. And so when our body ingests something that doesn't recognize whatever it is, what does it do? It mounts a defense system, and a defense system is almost always in the form of inflammation, which is why dairy is an incredibly inflammatory food for the human body. So they've sold us a raw bill. Oh, this has everything you need in one glass, in one 8-ounce glass, you can get everything you need. Which is untrue, right? You get maybe some of what you need, but in a really bad form, because there's so much in it that's also bad for you as a human. And their other marketing ploy is fear-mongering parents, which works every time, because parents want to do what's best for their children. So if they can flood all of their marketing into the pediatrician's office, and they can have the pediatricians spouting off their dairy marketing to parents are going to do anything. And they just believe it hook, line, and sinker, because parents are busy, right? You can't go look at the body of evidence and research against dairy or even for, and really collectively sit there and make your own decision. No, you listen to your doctor. So that's where they've landed. That's where they have landed, that they will sell the most product via athletes and fear-mongering parents.
So to give us some context, how much of the population is allergic or intolerant to dairy?
Well, lactose intolerance and an actual dairy allergy are two different things, right? So lactose intolerance is all of us are lactase persistent at birth, right? All of us can digest lactose at birth with the lactase enzyme that our gut has in it when we're born, to be able to digest our own mother's breast milk. Every baby mammal needs to be able to digest their own mother's breast milk. But the body is genius, and you know that better than anyone. It knows exactly what to do to be the most efficient. And so the body naturally turns off that lactase enzyme around the age of 5 or 6, or when a human, or when a mammal would stop breastfeeding. And so that is entirely and completely natural and normal. Completely normal to be lactose intolerant. Those of us that are not, and are lactase persistent, meaning that lactase enzyme stayed on past childhood into adulthood, because we have a genetic mutation, like me, because I'm white, I'm mostly Scottish, and the Northern Europeans have been milking cows the longest. They think about 6,000 to 7,000 years. And so over time, your body will genetically mutate to be able to handle what you're putting in it. So that's why, as you know, this is the Asian summit. About 98% of people of Asian descent are lactose intolerant because you guys have only been milking cows for like 70 years because it wasn't part of your diet, because it shouldn't be, in my opinion. So that's really important to understand. Lactose intolerance is normal, and lactase persistence that I have is abnormal, right? I'm genetically mutated. So that is about 70% of the population that's lactose intolerant, right? It's really high in Asian descent, Latin descent, African descent, the cultures that have not been stealing mother's breast milk from another species as long as we have. So next to lactose intolerance is an allergy, just a full-blown allergy to dairy, which we know from, some of the top allergens. Nuts, some people have allergies to nuts, but it's very low percentage. It's 3 to 4% of the population. About 8 weeks ago, a study came out that was done on anaphylactic shock in children under 16. And in that study that they did over a long period of time, dairy has now topped nuts, soy, and wheat as the top allergen in children under 16. So that's the newest. It's the newest data on the allergy. It's still much lower than lactose intolerance. Like I said, 70% of the world's population is lactose intolerant, but nonetheless, it's serious. It's a serious allergy. And it's amazing to me here in the United States that, a couple kids have a problem with a peanut allergy and they rip peanuts out of school. In public schools here in the United States, you're not allowed to take a peanut butter sandwich to school in your lunchbox because but they're serving dairy in every public school. And it is the top allergen in children that are 16. So there you go. Follow the dollar again, right? But it's insane.
I was in primary school and they used to deliver packets of chocolate milk, and I hated the banana flavor. So when the chocolate milk came in, I was chugging it down, and it was going to primary school. And I think they, to a certain degree, it started pretty early, particularly in Singapore, I would say, because that's where I'm based. So that's chocolate milk aside, people are drawn to dairy to a certain degree, and they say, oh, I just can't take out dairy. It's too hard. Why is that the case? What about dairy makes it almost impossible to kind of switch and move away from for some?
Well, it's delicious. So let's be honest. I used to have dairy. You used to have dairy. Just straight up fluid milk, not so delicious in my opinion, but yogurt and cheese and butter is delicious. So you just, you get connected to the way that you feel when you eat those foods. But concentrated milk is cheese. And I think this is the most twisted aspect of what you're asking, is that in nature, when a mother breastfeeds and a baby is eating and they come off the boob, and everyone knows that drunk baby look, right? It's like it's a happy, satiated, calm baby ready to take a nap. Well, there's part of a reason for that, and that is because mother's breast milk produces a mild form of a morphine-like substance, right? So that in the wild mother and baby bond, right? That's really important, so the baby doesn't starve. And so that bond continues. And so in dairy, because it's mother's breast milk, it has that morphine-like substance. So cheese has what we call casomorphine. It's basically when that morphine-like substance passes the blood-brain barrier in us as humans, and I'm assuming all mammals, it has a morphine-like effect on us. And so as adults, we're probably not supposed to continue to be breastfeeding, but we are, even if you're not drinking fluid milk and you're just eating cheese. And so we are literally addicted to cheese because of its morphine-like quality. And that is, it's such a twisted, sick use of the beauty of nature. And then that we do this as adults and steal that breast milk and then become addicted because, like, we're not babies anymore. We don't need to have drunk baby look when we come off after we eat cheese. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the thing that makes me craziest and saddest, is we take this beautiful thing from nature and we twist it all up.
My understanding is, at least where human breast milk is concerned, the protein content is a lot lower as compared to cow's milk, where the protein content is so much higher.
Yeah.
So maybe you could explain, explain that, and why maybe that high amount of protein, which is marketed as this superfood for health, is actually detrimental for our health.
And the fat too. It's interesting. There's actually quite a bit more fat in human breast milk than there is in a cow. So they're way off the carbs, proteins, and fats, human milk versus cow's milk. But, well, I think you just kind of go into the over proteining conversation, right? And all of the detriments if you're eating animal-based proteins that are filled with saturated fat. And what you're doing, the stress and strain that you're putting on your body to not only digest that, but then just all of the artery clogging components of eating so much saturated fat. And I think we just all in society today have been so hoodwinked by marketing. It's the diet culture, right? So that's a whole nother culture. It's a $80 billion a year supplement industry that much of it supports the diet culture, right? People trying to lose weight, go on a diet, and do this and do that. And they've got us, they used to have us believing fat was terrible, right? They sucked the fat out of everything. We had all these fat-free cookies and fat-free chips and fat-free everything. Then they made us decide fat was good, right? It's all to sell products. And now it's like, oh, we're, very frightened of carbohydrates and everything's high protein. And it's just, it's just whatever story they can sell, that we'll buy and believe. So a lot of people are eating at least 1.5 times the protein that their body actually requires, if not double.
Protein and muscle and overconsumption of protein, and this also association with protein and building strong bones, and of course dairy and strong bones, and calcium and strong bones as well. Is that really the case? Because there's always that mindset, perception that you drink dairy to get your calcium, and that's still the narrative in Singapore and Asia, where you still see cartons to say get your strong bones, get your vitamin D. How does that work?
That's one of the most frustrating parts of the marketing is, yes, it has some calcium in it. It's mother's breast milk, so it's going to have macronutrients and micronutrients. But the insane part about it is, as if dairy is the only food that contains calcium, which is obviously completely idiotic, right? Like they try to sell it as that's like really the only place that you can get it, when we know it is so bountiful in the plant-based world. All of your dark leafy greens and kale and collard greens are so high. Hemp seeds are incredibly high in calcium. Sesame seeds are the highest in ounce for ounce as far as calcium goes. So I always tell parents when they're like, oh, got to make sure we get the calcium. My kid's not necessarily going to chomp on raw kale, so I say tahini, right, which is sesame seeds. Dip the carrot sticks and the celery sticks in the tahini, and you're off to the races and good to go, and you're going to get more calcium ounce per ounce than you are with a glass of dairy milk. It's just it's just singularly like selecting nutrients that they think people believe that they need. Some of them they do, and some of them they don't. Calcium is definitely something that we need, but pretending and lying to us and making us believe that that's the only source of it's highway robbery, right? Because it comes with so many deleterious other effects. So it requires us, especially living in today's age, to learn to question more and learn to go down chart our own course of discovery. to really learn the truth and learn what is healthy and good for us. Because if we just believe the marketing, well, we'd still be smoking, right? Because they were the king and queen of marketers, right? They had us hoodwinked for a really long time, and dairy's just stolen a page out of tobacco's handbook.
And that reminds me of one of the plant-based doctors actually said, I can't remember which plant-based doctor, it's like smoking cigarette for the oxygen. So getting calcium for from dairy is like smoking for oxygen. So in
Yeah,
saying that,
that's Dr. Mills, I think, because
yeah, I think
I've
yeah,
spoken with him a lot, and he's said that all the
100%,
time.
yep.
And that's exactly there. It's a perfect way to put it, right? Right. Yeah. Smoking cigarettes is to get the oxygen, right? Is like, yeah, drinking dairy for the calcium. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because of the vehicle that it comes in. So you're not going to want to get your oxygen from smoking. Like you want to get it in other sources, other ways.
Like running, like being in nature.
Like anything. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've seen research on dairy and osteoporosis. Maybe you could share your findings over the years as well, because what the research that I've seen is,
Yeah.
the countries that consume more dairy are actually more prone to brittle bones. What have your findings shown?
The most well-known study, because it was done over such a really long period of time. It was a Scandinavian study, and it was women, and it was over 100,000 women over 20 years. And the study found that women who drank 3 glasses of dairy a day had a 60% higher rate of hip fracture and double the risk of death. And it's double the risk of death because your risk of death goes up by about 50% when you break your hip. That's a lot of times, for older people, that's the beginning of the end. So that's why double risk the death. But 60% higher rate of hip fracture. So their bones aren't holding up, having those 3 glasses of calcium a day. And the research isn't entirely clear on why. And I've learned this from Dr. Mills because he stays right on top of it. They think it's because the damaging effects of the degalactose sugar in dairy, that is a proponent of breaking down bones. But from what I understand, we still don't have the clear definitive answer, and they're studying it as we speak, but they think it's because of that specific sugar and the damage it does to bones, human bones, obviously, not cow bones. Nature is good to us, and puts in our mother's milk what we need, and it's different for each species, as we were talking about earlier.
What I also realized, beyond osteoporosis and what we just discussed, is skin issues as well. And I've noticed in Asia, I'm starting to see a lot of people with skin eczema. And I remembered having that as a kid, and I was drinking milk. And one of the biggest things that shifted for me was taking out milk. I mean, I've been a chronic asthmatic for all my life, and it's helped my respiratory system. So what's your experience, with athletes, with people that you work with, where dairy and skin allergies are concerned?
We've had multiple kiddos write us at Switch for Good, 15, 16, 17, 18, that their skin cleared up. And that's really, a lot of skin conditions. Well, let's just say acne specifically, can be, very hormone related. And there's 15 different sex hormones in cow's milk, as there should be, right? It's a lactating mother. It's also a pregnant mother, which is a whole nother conversation to have, because in the dairy industry, time is money. And so they give birth and they are impregnating them within a couple of weeks. So they're lactating and they're pregnant. And so you're getting the hormones from a lactating mother, and you're also getting the hormones from a pregnant mother. So yummy. That's something most people don't realize. That's like a double scoop, double Sunday scoop of hormones for you. Definitely clearing up acne is something that I hear, gosh, almost every day. And then eczema and skin conditions, I don't know the research on that very well. I don't know if there's been a ton, but you and I both know Dr. Angie Sadeghi, who's a plant-based gastroenterologist here in Newport Beach, near where I live. And she had really bad, embarrassing, she'll say, eczema on the palms of her hands and on her wrist and on her feet and like right here on her neck for years. And she's a doc. And so it was really embarrassing because she's, using her hands all the time and talking to patients and, and when she got rid of dairy, the eczema completely disappeared. So that's it's just a really interesting example of, certain skin conditions and that there is she has some type of dairy allergy. Obviously, that's not lactose intolerance. That is an actual allergy where her skin was acting out because there's a component of cow's milk that she's allergic to.
Well, another aspect that I want to just unpack is the ethics of the dairy industry, because of course, when you go to the supermarket and you see the happy cows, but what actually goes on is far from happy. So what has your experience been about, the underside of what the dairy, what the dairy industry does? Because in the minds of people, they just see, all right, well, it's just a cow there and the cow's meant to be milked, because if not, others might explode because there's so much being produced and we need to milk the cows anyway, so we might as well use the milk. So what actually goes on?
God. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I have met who don't realize that cows have to be pregnant to give milk. And it's almost like, okay, in a way, rightfully so, because it seems sick and sadistic to get a cow pregnant and then steal her baby and then steal her milk. I mean, people are like, that's insane. Nobody does that, right? So yeah, I think, if I didn't really think about it, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, cows, yeah, they just happen to be this one species that just produces milk. All of the ridiculous non-regulated terms like grass-fed, right, and humanely raised, pasture raised, grass finished, like all of this stuff that is not regulated here in the United States anyway by the USDA, is praise on the goodness of people, because people want to do good. They want to say, oh, humanely raised, okay, I'll pay more for that. I mean, that just right there shows you that most people are trying to do good. They're willing to pay more money, double for their dozen eggs because, it says cage free, which really has hardly any meaning, or pasture raised, which in the egg laying chicken industry, there could be a pasture outside and the chickens are in a barn with one little tiny door out to the pasture that most of the chickens can't get to. That could be pasture raised. That's the definition. So, I hate that about both industries, but the dairy industry for sure, people don't realize, you have to be pregnant, and cows are pregnant for 9 months, just like humans. So they go through all of that, all of the pregnancy and then childbirth. So anybody that's given birth that's listening to this doesn't feel great. You probably used a drug to maybe not feel how awful it feels. And, cows don't get any of that. They just give natural childbirth. And within about 24 hours, their babies are literally dragged away from them to go into their veal crates or to be recycled back in the industry. And, they're hooked up to machines. And then they do that to them over and over and over and over and over again until the production slows down to the point where the profits are not high enough for the farmers, and then they go to slaughter. So there's also, I think, this real misconception that dairy cows don't die, or we don't slaughter them, we don't kill them. No, we kill them after 4 years of producing for us. So their misery is certainly longer than your chicken sandwich, because they kill chickens at about 6 to 8 weeks. They slaughter pigs for pork at about 6 months, beef cattle at about 9 months. So dairy cows get to do this for 4.5, 5 years until the production goes down. And then that's your McDonald's hamburger, because the meat is not as fine as it would be because of, you guessed it, what their body's been through. And so, obviously just, I ask all the time, people go, well, they don't kill them. And you're like, where is this dairy cow sanctuary in the world? Am I missing it? Like, where do you think they are, people? Could you imagine how much dairy the world consumes? Like, if we didn't kill them, where they would basically have they would have taken over by now, right? I mean, there's 250 million dairy cows on planet Earth right now. So, about every 4 years. So there would be, by this point, billions of dairy cows walking around looking for a home if we didn't kill them at the end of their cycle. So yeah, just kind of like put the math together, and there's the truth.
Some context, you said 4 years after a dairy cow gets slaughtered, but what's the average lifespan of a cow?
Oh my God, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, I mean, go to any sanctuary and they've all got at least a 20-year-old cow. Yeah, not 4. Definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
And chicken 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. And what's the lifespan of a chicken again? The average lifespan?
Oh gosh, I probably don't know that the best, but I was just at a sanctuary in Pennsylvania, Indra Animal Sanctuary, my favorite sanctuary on planet Earth, 2 weeks ago. And they have some 6, 7, and 8-year-old chickens. So at least that. Yeah.
Wow.
But in natural conditions, I bet they live even older. Yeah. Wow. I mean, we know eagles can live to 20, and these are birds that have been born and bred in the industry that they've rescued. So they have all sorts of issues. So they're dying earlier than a wild bird, let's say, would anyway. So, birds are, could be into the teens.
I agree. I mean, I went to a sanctuary once in Melbourne, and a lot of these pigs, fortunately, who were saved as piglets, they live, long quite a few years. But the thing is that because they've been to a certain degree genetically modified, so they grow really big, really, really quickly. And I agree with you, their lives as towards the end aren't the best because they're Franken kind of animals because they've been jabbed with steroids, jabbed with all sorts of synthetic hormones, and the DNA has been altered. So it's just really, really sad for the lives of these animals. So I guess moving into the light, I would say. That's moving into
exactly.
The light.
That's enough darkness for one interview, right?
I think so. What would you suggest, for people who are maybe, for example, in Asia, who are stuck with dairy and want to transition out? What are the normal first steps?
Yeah. Well, something that came to mind, right, as you were asking that question, and I was thinking about kind of explaining the horror behind the dairy industry. I think most people think, well, that does sound awful, but it's just a cow. And I'm saying that because I was one of those people, like 1,000%. I loved my dogs and my rabbits and my horses, but I would have said, it's just a chicken. It's just a cow. And what is the main reason that we other people or different species? It's because they're not like us. I mean, that's that's the crux of racism. They're not like us. I don't understand. They must be less than. Why we as humans go there, I don't know, but we do. So with other species, it's the same concept. We're othering them because they're not like us, so they must be less than. They must be dumb. They must not, have a lot of brain cells. They must not be able to do that, this or that. So one of the first things that I would suggest someone do, if they want to get close to their food, because currently it might be food for them, certainly was for me for 35 years of my life, is go to a sanctuary and meet these animals. Is that's what really opened up a whole new world of my understanding of the lives of these beautiful beings: cows, chickens, pigs, goats, sheep, the animals that we typically eat or take milk from. That will change everything, because if you spend any time observing them, you realize they have pretty incredible structures built into their relationships. They have hierarchies just like we do. They play, they bitch, they kvetch, they whine, they laugh, They do all the stuff that we do, and then lots of stuff that we don't do, just like we do lots of stuff that they don't do. So that's number one. And then if you leave that sanctuary and you're like, I'm not eating that anymore because I love them and they're amazing and complex and beautiful and filled with light and love, I say still take it easy on yourself, treat yourself with the same love that you would treat someone that you love, and start to just tiptoe down the journey. And if you're loving it and it's fun and it feels great, then go all in. But this is not a diet. Veganism is not a diet. It is so much more. It is an adventure in compassion, and it is a journey for your body and your health and your output and your performance that will blow you away. So don't think of it as a diet, because what do we do when we think of things that are diet? If we don't do it perfectly, we quit. So leave the perfection to the side, go have fun, discover what's out there, eat at a plant-based restaurant, or buy one new vegetable that you don't really know how to cook or prepare at the grocery store this week and make it. Fill your plate with more plants than animals, even if there's still some animals on your plate. And over time, the plants are going to crowd out the animals, and then maybe there won't be any anymore, but on your plate. But I think discovery is the key, right? Is like, get in discovery mode. Don't get in perfectionistic mode, because then we all fail, right? Because none of us are perfect. So I think get in discovery mode and have fun with it. And don't worry about it if you, whatever, mess up or whatever that even means, right? Don't worry about it. Keep going. Keep being gritty, right? And keep after what you have set, whatever the goal is that you've set for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, starting with a strong why, and
Yeah.
that's how I started in this lifestyle as well. And like you, at times I was worried whether I would function properly in the gym with other trainers who were eating like roast chickens and kilos of meat. And when I switched overnight as well, I wasn't actually sure whether I was going to survive to a certain degree. But inside, I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And fortunately, I had support my wife, Emily, around me, who was also on the lifestyle. So, so where that's concerned, why is one thing and having support is another. Based on what you've experienced, the people who have potentially been inspired by you, inspired by the game changes, and from what you've seen, what challenges or pitfalls do normally people fall into when they come into this lifestyle initially?
The thing I hear the most is, I think that the traditional human condition is one that doesn't want to be different. Like, most people don't want to be different. They don't want to go against the grain. They don't want to be the odd man or woman out. They don't want to be the weirdo at the table. So that's what I hear the most is, because I have heard, from a fair amount of people that like, oh yeah, I saw the Game Changers. It was really cool. I did that for a while, but then I went back. And it's like, oh God, what happened?
I've
So I'll
heard that
ask them.
too as well. I've
Yeah,
heard that
we're starting to
many a
hear
time.
it. It sucks because for like a year we heard like, we're making a shift and it feels amazing. And so I always ask people, well, why? What happened? And because a lot of times people will say, I'll say, did you feel better or did you like it or whatever? And they're like, oh yeah, I felt great. I felt great. I felt so much better. And you're like, okay, but why did you go back? And they just said, it was just too hard. And I'll say, well, what do you mean? Like what was specifically was hard? And it wasn't ever, I haven't had anyone say to me yet, that the grocery store was difficult or cooking at home was difficult. I've never had anyone say that. They just say, most of them say it just got too hard with like friends and family. Like when I go out to eat, when I hang out with people, when I'm at parties, when I go places where I don't have control of the food, it was just too hard. And I was always having to ask for something special or this or that or whatever. And they didn't like feeling like that. And I get it. It's okay. We're all different. And I'm not bagging on people that don't want to be different, but I always try and encourage people when they say that, like to get their power back. get their chutzpah back. Like, why did you do this in the first place? Well, because I wanted to take back my health, or I wanted to improve my performance. Some people say, well, the planetary responsibility aspect of the Game Changers really struck me. And I was like, that is enough. I'm going to stand up for the planet, for my children, and I'm going to change over to plant-based diet. Or it was for ethics, right? It was for the other species that we share this planet with and not wanting to eat them anymore. So whatever your original like conviction was, because you walked out of the film with a conviction, or whatever it, wherever you changed, it might not have been the film. It could be all sorts of different reasons that you changed over. It's like, get your groove back. Hold on to that and grab onto that and be the different one. Because if you're the different one, then you're probably the one that's making the change, right? Like it's be the change type of thing. And when I shifted my mindset towards that, it makes me feel really powerful now at a restaurant when I'm like, oh, I'm plant-based, no biggie. I don't announce it, but I'll talk to the waiter and I'll say, hey, can you make me a blah, 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 and bring me a blah, blah, blah. And he, nowadays it's easy. They're all the waiters, the waitress services, servers, whatever we're supposed to call them. I was a waitress. They know what we're talking about now. Unlike 10 years ago when they were like, you're a what? Like it was not, they didn't get it. And they're always really giving, really nice, really accepting. And then I finish and I'm like, yeah, like I stuck with my ethics. I stuck with who I am, and then that builds on itself, right? You're a mind coach, that feeling builds on itself, and then you can't ever release that power back, right? It's like your power and it's in here. So I try to encourage people in that way, because I get it. You know what I mean? It is a tough aspect, because what are you doing? You're going directly against the status quo. So, and the status quo is everyone else. And, there's a lot of them that are still eating animals. So, it's tough. You do have to really stand up for yourself but think of it as standing up for the earth or the animals or your health, or your kids' health, all of it.
Great. And is that what is your new Eating Like an Ollie campaign is about? Maybe you could share a little bit about that.
So we did this campaign during the Tokyo Olympics just to take people on a fun journey. And it was a game. It was like a bingo board style game. And we had multiple Olympians that were competing in Tokyo, and then multiple former Olympians giving their recipes and their tips and their, for plant-based performance gains. So, but the Olympic Committee came after us using the word Olympian. So we thought we'd have a little fun with that. And instead of just changing the name to like eat like a whatever, eat like an athlete or something, that we'd have a little fun with it. So we changed it to the eat like an OLY dash 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 just to, like have a little fun with it, because it was pretty frustrating. We are a group of actual Olympians, and they are not wanting to allow us to say Olympians, that we're Olympians. I mean, it's insane when you really think about it. But it was just a fun 2.5 weeks for people to just get charged up, and it's been a rough 1.5 years, right? So it was just supposed to be full of positivity and love and great food and delicious recipes and journey with people, with like-minded people. So it was cool. We reached quite a few people. We reached just under 2 million people with everything that we did over that 2.5 weeks. So hoping that lots of people are started on their plant-based journey now.
I always love the work that you do, and just the fire that you have in you. And of course it came from, your past, from your past with anorexia and all the way up to, being an athlete and developing that grit and to where you are right now, just being an amazing example and a leader of this lifestyle. So, in summary, maybe you could just give a little bit of words of inspiration. As we've been chatting, it has been a challenging time for most, in the past 2 years with COVID lockdowns, and maybe you could share some words of wisdom and hope for maybe 2022 and maybe even the years ahead.
I know, right? Where are we headed with this, and how many variants are we is this gonna be our new normal? I don't know. Yeah, the unknowing is becoming the hardest part, right? Before we were just, we saw a light at the end of the tunnel. We thought we did. It was like, oh, we'll get this will only last so long. It just didn't even seem. And now when we're staring down that this could be part of our life is really hard to digest, I feel like. So we've all sort of like figured out new ways to take care of ourselves and new self-care ways, but I think we can still learn from, the aspects or the points, I guess, that we've talked about, on this podcast. We've talked about discovery, staying in discovery mode, right? Because if you keep learning, then you keep growing. And that's what makes us feel alive, or me anyway. If I'm continuing to learn and grow and morph into what's hopefully a better version of myself. Don't always nail that. Some days I'm a worse version of myself for sure. But that's when I do nail it, that's what makes me feel most alive. So I think we can learn from continuing to discover, continuing to learn, to move ourselves into better versions of ourselves. And then, you talked about grit. This is certainly requiring a whole lot of grit because it's some days are just kind of awful and bizarre and just not what we want the days to be. So, getting gritty and it's like hanging in there, right? And one of the best ways that I've found to hang in there is to call a friend and see how they are hanging in there. Like reach out and walk on this journey with someone else. Because I've also found that half the time they're worse off than I am, and I realize, oh gosh, okay. And then if I'm there for them, that's another aspect of making you feel like you're growing and you're giving back. So, get gritty, lean into people who maybe you don't even realize might be suffering. Sometimes I've just called the people who I've been like, oh, they're totally fine because they're like the strongest person I know and they are breaking down. So yeah, reach out, right? That's if this has taught us anything, it's that, our neighbor might not be doing as well as we think they are, keeping up with the Joneses. But yeah, let's go with discovery and grit. I like those. I'm going to take those away too from this.
Yeah, I really love that discovery, grit, and connecting with people. Because I think it's one of those things we never know. And having suffered from depression myself many years ago, I realized that a lot of times you are not alone. You may think that you are alone, but you are never alone. And sometimes all you need to do is just, at least from my perspective, is just say, hey, I'm hurting. Can you help? And there are more people around you than you never imagined that are willing to dive forward and say, how can I help? So with that in mind, thank you very much, Dotsie. Always love your energy and all that you're doing. And of course, I really deeply treasure our friendship.
As do I.
Welcome you to Singapore many years ago. So hopefully I'll be in LA, or maybe you'll be in Singapore sometime soon. I really appreciate it.
You're coming here first, mister. I was there late 2019 and you are coming here and you're staying here and you're going to Unbeatable Mind, and I'm going to come cheer you on, and Kurt can't wait to see you, and we're going to have all sorts of fun. So I'm waiting for that.
Amazing. Me too. When skies open, we'll be there for sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being on the summit, Dotsie.
Loved every second, and thanks for doing this in Asia. You're the only one that could do it right. So yeah, bless you.